Welcome to Inside the Sales Playbook, where on each and every episode, we dive into the actual sales processes, the plays and strategies working for teams today. No high-level overview. We get into the actual weeds of what some of the fastest growing and most successful sales teams are doing today to drive revenue and grow their business. And we've got two sponsors of the show. The first is Sales Kit. Sales Kit takes the guesswork out of scaling your sales knowledge all on one great platform. No longer do you have to have your knowledge in Google Dropbox and Drives and all these other folders. Sales Kit makes it easier than ever for your team to access the sales knowledge that actually works. You can sign up for a free trial at getsaleskit.com. And we're sponsored by my book, Raise Your Standards, the definitive guide to building seven-figure sales. You can get a free copy of that book to help grow your sales, whether you're an entrepreneur, sales leader, or sales contributor at getsaleskit.com/book. And I'm your host, Mark Evans. And today I'm really excited for our conversation. I've got an absolute expert on the topic of social selling and especially LinkedIn. As you can see from her background here, this is going to be a great conversation all about how to use social selling. So I've got Brynne Tillman on the show. Brynne, welcome to the show.
Oh, Mark, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's our pleasure here. Now, Brynne, you go by a lot of titles, right? I've got you as the author, the founder, the CEO. You're a podcast host, but more importantly, I think you're an expert, or I believe, I know you are an expert when it comes to LinkedIn and social selling. But how about you give the listeners a little bit of context here? What is Social Sales Link, the company that you have founded and you're the CEO of, and how do you help your clients achieve their mission?
Oh, thanks for asking. So essentially, it's pretty simple. We help sales professionals schedule more conversations by leveraging the power of LinkedIn. And that's, everywhere from professional branding, showing up as a resource, how to leverage thought leadership and curate content that attracts, teaches, and engages buyers, and how do we leverage our existing network to prospect.
Oh, I really like that. There's going to be a lot of different ways I want to go into this, but let's kind of start off in the beginning because I'd love to hear, Brynne, it seems like you could have done just about everything. You're doing a lot right now. How the heck did you even get into sales?
It goes back to my high school job at Friendly's ice cream restaurant, right?
Friendly's ice cream is where it all started. Okay.
It all started there. So what I realized pretty early on is that I could control my tips. Right? If I sold more appetizers and I sold more desserts, I'd get a bigger tip.
Yeah.
I loved that, right? and my management recognized that my checks on average were significantly higher than everyone else's. And pretty early on, they're like, well, what are you doing? Right.
Yeah.
And so, even at the age of 15 and 16, I was training.
Wow.
So yeah, that's really where I recognized that I had the power to control my paycheck. And sales is one of the few places that you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it started with Friendly's, and then it looks like you had spent some time in the corporate career, always in training or always rising up to a level of training. Is that something you've just naturally felt like you've been good at, or is that something you've had to, kind of like adjust your own style, your own personality, your own, best practices towards?
So it's interesting. So out of college, my first job was at Dun & Bradstreet, and I was in an inbound call center. But I was bored, like taking orders, right? Yeah. So I started talking to the people that were calling in. And based on what I'd learned from them, and I have story after story, but based on what I learned from them, I would sell them additional products. They were amazing at training us about their products and how they were used for credit decisions. And so I had a lot of knowledge that really was pointless if I wasn't having these conversations. Yeah. So I started having these conversations, and at one point, a client sent a letter on how we saved her business because of how I helped buy a $50 report that I thought was important based on what I heard from her. So I was pulled by the training department in my early 20s to help move this order-taking department that was both in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I think it was Houston, Texas, or maybe Austin. I'm been a long time. I think it was Houston. Anyway, and had to convert them from order takers to solution sellers. And it really was about learning about the needs of the client. So that was early on. I was pulled, even before I was officially a salesperson, into training sales, which was interesting. But throughout my career, I was always in sales, and I was always the person that, when there's a new person, I was the, ride with Brynne for a couple of days, see what she's doing, right? Like that.
Yeah.
And so I naturally, as a decent salesperson, but even better trainer, kind of moved into that world.
Okay. So it sounds like you had a lot more success than just a decent salesperson, right? If that's why you're being very humble, and I appreciate that. Let's transition a little bit. I'm really curious. I get a lot of conversations, and I'm in a lot of conversations. I get a lot of questions from entrepreneurs as well as sales leaders. It seems like just about everybody is trying to reduce their ramp time and increase the quality of their training process. I'd be really curious, how does social selling and how does LinkedIn, how can organizations infuse that into their onboarding and training process? And do you think it's necessary?
So I think it's absolutely foundational. I think especially today, when we're not at trade shows and we're not networking in person, and we're digital selling, virtual selling is a reality.
Yeah.
So with that, virtual selling, social selling is an element of virtual selling, but it's really important because that's where you start the conversations, right? There's a ton of great content out there by some amazing companies on how to virtual sell, but it starts with, okay, we get on a Zoom call now, what do we do, right?
Yeah.
And so how did we get on the Zoom call is really important. How did we start that conversation? And that's where I believe the foundational piece of LinkedIn and social selling, it is core to all salespeople, period.
Yeah.
And I could talk about that in a minute. Social selling can take it all the way through the sales process, and we can talk about ways to do that. But where every salesperson needs to pivot is to look at LinkedIn as the new trade show, as the new networking event, as the opportunity to start these conversations. And there are a few ways to do this, right? So there's the branding piece, there's the positioning piece, there's the content piece. But then there's, and that's a longer game.
Yeah. And that's like the three-headed monster. So branding, just for those that maybe have missed it. So really it sounds like the three kind of core components of a good LinkedIn or social selling strategy is branding, positioning, and content. Is that correct?
Well, there's a fourth piece.
Oh, there's a fourth one. I missed it. Four-headed monster.
Fourth piece is leveraging your existing network.
Okay.
Right? And that's the prospecting piece. So now you'll hear, oh my gosh, people start to cringe now. Oh my gosh, I'm getting, connections and pitched every single day. And I hate that. That is not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're not talking about cold calling on LinkedIn and pitching and throwing it against the wall and hoping that we get a call. We're talking about strategically leveraging our existing connections.
Yeah.
So it starts with taking inventory of who are you connected to. Most of us are guilty of connect and forget.
Yeah, well, I am. Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about.
The worst thing is connect and pitch. The second worst thing as a business person is connect and forget. Now, it's not as offensive, but it doesn't convert to business.
Yeah.
Right.
And can I just stop you real quick there, Brynne? Why? Yeah. So it seems like the connect and pitch is at an all-time high. I mean, it seems overwhelming, and I'm almost concerned that LinkedIn is going to turn into, an outdated platform that nobody's going to use, like the MySpace of the world. Why do you think it's getting to those levels, and what can we do to, kind of stop that? And what's your advice to someone like that?
Yeah. So the first thing is, I don't think it'll ever turn to MySpace because of the sheer data.
Okay.
And the value of the data.
Okay.
So and Facebook attempted with it was called Branch Out, where they tried to become a business platform. Okay. And as much data as you think Facebook has, they didn't have professional data.
Huh.
And without the professional data, no one can catch up to LinkedIn at this point, in my opinion. Just because there's 700 million people, professionals on LinkedIn, and they're all self-updated. So it's as the content, the quality of that data is the best in the world, because you could buy lists all day long, and they're mining data, but nothing is better than me updating where I am today, right? Like that's the core. So what should we do? I think what we should do, and if I were LinkedIn, I would actually have a button that said, bait and switch, right? Connect and pitch, right? This person pitched me. So there might be a warning button, right? Like that you go, you're getting, and the warning could be long. I'm not saying shut people down for it, but 3 people in the last 24 hours reported you as a pitcher. Mm-hmm. Consider changing the way that you're approaching LinkedIn.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, that's really good. That's
really
how.
Good. But I actually will respond with, can I ask, how's this working for you? Yeah. And 95% of the time, I have a response in under a second because it's automation that has nothing to do with what I said. And so, why is this happening now is part of your question, and why it's happening now is because people are desperate. Business is difficult. LinkedIn is the most powerful way to get business, but you can't do that. If I were, let's go to the real world for a moment, and I were in a networking meeting and I walk up to you and go, "Hey, Mark, I'm Brynne. We help companies just like yours." You'd be like, "What?"
Nobody
would do that.
I got to take this call real quick. Yeah,
no, but look at the spinach dip, right? Like I'm out of here, right? Yeah. So it's absolutely frustrating that people don't recognize there's a human being on the other side of that message. So one of the things we say is treat that human being on the other side of the message just as you would if they were on the other side of the table.
I really like that.
And we have to start having real, authentic conversations with people. And you can't do that at mass. We have to start being very purposeful and think of it as walking up to people in a networking meeting and starting conversations that will lead to opportunities if there is one. But if not, it just leads to someone that you had a nice conversation with in a networking room, which happens all the time. Yeah. We'd be okay with that here.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Let's maybe transition a little bit into like a real world scenario. Let's say I'm a company that primarily like led off of, or I got a lot of my leads from going to various trade shows. Let's say we'd go to, 6 a year, which is very common for a lot of organizations. And that's where we got a lot of our leads. All right, COVID hits, right? No more trade shows. There's these virtual trade shows, which I haven't been to many. I don't know. Well, I guess the jury's still out on that. But if I want to still hit my quota, make my numbers, help my company grow, what do I need to do as a, let's say in the trenches salesperson and also a sales manager for me to help make sure that, we can continue to do business?
Love this question. So the very first thing is pull out all the business cards of all the people that you've ever met at those trade shows, and make sure you're connecting with them on LinkedIn.
Oh, I like that. Okay, so going through, this is kind of that inventory aspect, I would imagine.
Well, so this is pre-inventory.
Oh, pre-inventory. Okay.
Pre-inventory. This is like, make sure, go through your CRM, go through your invoices, go through anyone that you have engaged with since the beginning of time, and connect with them on LinkedIn with a little note saying, I'm not sure if you remember me, but we met at this trade show. I'm starting to use LinkedIn as a real networking tool. If you're into it, let me know. Let's connect, right? So let's start there. The second thing is then take inventory, or we could do it reversed. It doesn't matter which we do first. And there's 2 ways to do that. First way is export your connections. It's easy to do. It's about 8 steps. And in 10 minutes, you get every connection, first name, last name, company, position, and the date you connected. There is an email column, but due to GDPR, canned spam stuff, you have to opt into it. So you're not going to get a ton of emails, but you're going to get a list. And 2,000, 5,000, whatever it is, maybe you decide I'm going to look at 100 a day. And I'm going to create a column to the left of the first name and put a little X next to the people that I should be talking to.
Okay.
And generally, you're going to have between 10 and 20% of your connections will be people worth having a conversation with.
Okay, so 10 to 20% of all those people, whether it was, former high school classmates or a guy, someone that you meet at the gym, really look at, all right, who can you connect with and who should you be talking with? That's kind of that next step.
Correct. I have a client who, doing this step, recognized that one of her clients moved to a new company.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And during COVID, closed a $1.5 million deal.
That's a sizable deal. That's a good one.
And staffing just by taking inventory,
Okay.
right? There are other things we want to see, not just prospects, but who are referral partners. Who are, if we went to a trade show, that's the way to look at it. If I went to a trade show and I got this list of all the people, how many of these people would I want to go up and have a conversation with, right? It's taking that inventory, and you're already connected. And they may not remember you, and that's okay. Because you can say, I'm not sure if you remember me. We connected in May of 2018, and I know that because in that, well, there's two places to find that too, but in that export it says when you connected. I actually reached out to the very first person I ever connected to that I'm like, I just want to let you know. And we started a conversation, and they referred me 3 pieces of business. Like, so it's
wow.
It's just about starting real conversations. Okay. So taking inventory. The other thing is you can search in LinkedIn by location, by title, by industry. So if you can build out kind of your buyer map, what does your perfect buyer look like? You can go in and search all your first degree connections by location, which you can't do when you export your connections. So you can drill it down a little bit more.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. So then the next thing is your second degree connection. So once you have, and which by the way could take months, but once you've really started the conversations with your first degrees, now I want to look at my second degrees, and I can search these in multiple ways. Maybe I want to get into a company. So I put the company name in, and I click on all employees, and I click on second degrees, and I can see I have, 72 people inside that company that I have a shared connection with.
Okay.
So now I want to drill it down. Who are my potential influencers or decision makers?
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
And then I have 7 connections. Oh, look, Mark Evans is one of them. I love Mark. Mark and I just had a conversation. I'm going to reach out to Mark, and I'm going to say, hey, Mark, really great talking with you on the podcast the other day. I happen to notice that you're connected to Jane at Merck. How well do you know her?
Okay. Right? Yeah, that's a much different conversation than what I think a lot of salespeople do is like, well, who do you know? Like, do you have anybody that you could refer me to?
I can't think of anyone right now. Right.
Yeah. So you're going into specific companies. So this takes a little legwork, which is probably why a lot of people don't do it. A little bit of investigative research and saying, hey, can you introduce me? I know you're this, or I see you're connected to this person. Can you introduce me? Wow. I really, really like that.
And I can search your connections. I can go in just to Mark Evans and pick it. And do the same search with titles and locations and industries. And now when I go, I know I have Jane at Merck that you might know or you're connected to, but you probably only know 50% of the people that you're connected to. But I'm going to go, okay, before I reach out to Mark, I'm going to see everyone. And oh my gosh, he has 18 people that meet my ideal search. Now I'm going to say, hey, Mark, would you mind jumping on a call? I'm going to be reaching out to 18 people that you happen to be connected to. But before I do, I'd love some insights from you. Would you be open to a quick 10-minute call? Wow. Now you go through all 18 names and you are like, okay, these 8 I think would be good for you. And I can take one of 2 paths. I can either say, thank you so much for your time and going through these. Is there anyone on this list that you'd feel comfortable introducing me to? And maybe 2 of them. Or I could take it all off and not make it feel like a bait and switch, because all I said was, can I review these with you? And I could say, thank you so much for the insights. When I reach out to all 8 of these people, would it be okay if I mentioned we had this call and you thought it made sense for me to reach out? Sure. So now I reach out, Jane. Mark Evans and I were chatting the other day. Your name came up in our conversation. And after I talked a little bit about what I was doing, he thought it made sense for me to reach out and introduce myself. Let's connect and set up a time to talk.
Totally changes the dynamic of the conversation.
Completely.
You're no longer just showing up and throwing up, right? And just this cold pitch. I really, really like that. I mean, is the resistance that a lot of people don't do that, is that it's a little bit of nerve wracking. It's a little scary to reach out to somebody like that to make that introduction. Or, I mean, that seems like a step that just about everybody could do. So why aren't salespeople doing that?
It's not resistance. It's the not knowing that's even a thing. It's, when people hear it, it's game changing.
Yeah.
But even the smartest of salespeople who have grown their entire business based on client referrals don't know the capabilities of LinkedIn. So it's really, in some ways, LinkedIn's fault for not being really clear, but I'm not sure LinkedIn knows how amazing they are in some areas.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. And so it sounds like, so that's the type of system that you train salespeople on,
Yes.
you train organizations on to use this. What are some success stories that you've had of individual sales reps as well as teams that have implemented systems like this?
I mean, I could go on and on and on, but the bottom line is, on average, our clients triple their pipeline.
That's incredible.
So most of what, although I have, some close conversations like Michelle, who closed the $1.5 million deal, who now in a call last night realized she's up to 4 million, which is really cool. I just don't have it in writing yet. I only have the 1.5. So we'll stick with that until that's, till she updates her recommendation for me. But the bottom line is the people that do, even if, and I'm all about content and attracting and engaging, but there are some salespeople that the content has to be great. And we can talk about content that does convert because most doesn't.
Okay.
But the salespeople that leverage their current clients, and by the way, you have a current client, on average, you probably have 3 people inside that organization that you could get referrals from, not just one.
Wow.
If you have 25 clients, you have 75 people to reach out to. And then, and then there's the referral partners. Who has referred you business over the years? Let's get on the phone with them and let's mine their connections, right? Like, and then you have your whole general network that you might be connected to, you can see who they know based on a company search or a title search. And so there is no need to go beyond your first and seconds if you have any kind of history in business.
Wow.
It's a little bit harder for the newbies.
Okay.
Right out of college, I don't have a strong network. I can leverage my alumni a little bit, but I haven't proven myself out there. Now there's a real balance where we really have to show up as a subject matter expert.
Okay.
And that's where really good content can come in.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about content. Now, I read a stat, I think it was maybe a year or maybe 2 years ago. So I don't know if it's outdated or not. And you can obviously correct me on this. And I think the stat went something along the lines of only 1% of everyone on LinkedIn is creating content at this time. Does that still hold true? And why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's the latest stat. It's about a year old. I have not seen an updated stat. So we're going with that until another study is done.
Let's go with it.
Yeah. So the bottom line, I think, is, so I have clients where we create great content and they're even scared to hit the share button. There is such a fear of not doing it perfectly. It's kind of, it's like the fear of talking in front of crowds.
Yeah.
The content in front of crowds. And I'm like, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? Nobody likes it. Nobody even notices it. That's the worst thing. Mm-hmm. Right. But actually there's worse, which is put out bad content. So that is worse, but we can talk about content in a way, you can brand with content, you can educate with content, and you can use content to actually start conversations.
Okay.
Right? And we have to master the ask offer ratio in social selling. And this was inspired by Gap Selling, a book that Keenan wrote. I don't know if you're familiar.
That's a great book. Yeah, absolutely. We love Keenan. And so you call that the ask offer ratio.
Well, Keenan called it that, and we're adopting it. So the ask offer ratio is we are asking them for something, an investment of time or money or whatever that might be. The offer needs to be worth more than what they've invested for them to say that it's worth it, right? Like that's on a simple level. So our ask to read a piece of content is 3 minutes of their time. That's an investment. At the end of that time, they're going to make one of 3 decisions. And this is my adaptation. So Keenan inspired. This is Social Sales Link's adaptation.
Great.
They're going to have one of 3 responses. One is bait and switch. It happens all the time. That's even a connection request. And then you pitch me as a bait and switch in my mind. But a piece of content that turns out to be a pitch or, feature benefit collateral on your product or service. It's not educational. Or just the title was, more interesting than the content. that is going to establish how they see you as that subject matter expert. So it's so absolutely essential that we're not there. Most people are at neutral. Neutral's not great. It doesn't hurt you, but it's not compelling and it doesn't turn into any kind of conversation. What we need to do most of the time, or as much as possible, is hit compelling. That means compelling could be as small as I like it, I comment on it, I mention someone's name in a comment because I think they're going to get value from it. I ask you to connect, or I even ask for a phone call. But we need to be at compelling because that's what converts people and moves them closer to your solution.
Okay. So compelling, I think when I first hear compelling, it's like, well, I could immediately see how someone would go to kind of that perfectionist side, like compelling, right? I've got to make this compelling. So it's got to look like, the latest Star Wars, or it's got to be like this action-packed sequence with great lighting and great filming. How do you bring that down to someone's level who's selling like a boring product, like in my opinion, right? A financial product or like an insurance product. How can they relate to make their content compelling?
Yeah, so I love that. So there's really 5 points to making a piece compelling. First one is it resonates with the reader. They're talking to me. The second one is you created curiosity.
Okay.
Because if you create curiosity, I want to keep reading.
Okay.
The third one is I learning something new that I didn't know before. Even if it's the smallest, littlest thing, but I have this little bit of an aha moment, like, ooh, like we're calling it the pug tilt, like,
The pug tilt. I dig that. Yeah. Okay. I can go with that.
Right. So, you've created that. You get them thinking a little bit differently than their current situation. And that may even be, I'm not sure about my current situation. Is there a gap in my current situation? Am I missing out? Do I have FOMO? Right? Like, what's happening? But my current situation is not aligning with what I just learned.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
Right. And the fifth piece is it has to lead back to your solution, not lead with. When you lead with, you are pitching. When you lead to, you're dropping these little breadcrumbs of insights that get them to raise their hand and say, I need to learn more.
So not having two totally unrelated topics where you're like kind of lead magnet or this content is about, I don't know, baking, and here at the end you sell car service or something like that.
Correct. It has to align with your solution.
Okay, I really like that. So that's the 5. Wow, that is really, really good. And then what do you recommend as far as people, when it comes to content creation? Is there like a calendar or a schedule that they should follow? Because you hear a lot about, hey, the algorithm, you can't just show up once and then not post again for another month. You won't get any traction. What's your advice to people that are looking to get started?
Yeah, so I'm just going to put the algorithm on the table for a moment. I'll say, if you want brilliant algorithm, have Andy Foote come on your podcast, because he's the most brilliant algorithm, LinkedIn algorithm, I think, out there.
Okay.
For consistency in content. So that's a challenge for a lot of salespeople that are not writers. But here's the thing: is nobody's reading blog posts anymore anyway, right? They're just not. So I'm going to just give you, there's a million ways to do this. I'm going to give you 2 ways to get content started.
Okay.
And so content calendar, pick a topic for the month. Now, we don't always do this. So we have a VA that does a topic for a month. She actually interviews the 4 of us, takes our content, and just makes pretty little images in Canva. But pick one, and then we do other things as well. But pick a topic for the month. If you're financial services, maybe it's Roth IRA, maybe it's the Rule of 72. I don't know. Pick something. One topic. If you're not a writer, get on Zoom and record yourself talking about the topic. Right?
I like that.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
Go upload it to otter.ai, OTTER.ai. In 10 minutes, you'll have the entire transcript.
Okay, great.
Right? So from that, you can take quotes from yourself. You can make images. You can do word art by putting all, your keywords into. There's a lot you could do for the month. Like if you talk for 10 minutes, you'll get 5 quotes from yourself. I
really like that. So it's like using every piece of the pig, right? Instead of just, this is it, right? Like we can just throw this out there. You're creating, word art from it. Those quotes with a great background, which I love and still can't figure out how to do.
Canva.
But all these other, That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the other way is to start with a poll.
Yeah.
Right?
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So, get a question. Now, be careful that the poll does not look like you are, it's not a discovery call, right?
Yeah.
And the way you could do that, I think, is start with a statistic. 54% of people think this.
Yeah.
Right? So now somebody else started it, not me, right? Gartner says, Forbes says, they say. So now when I start to read that, I no longer think that you are prospecting me because you were inspired by somebody else. This didn't come just from you. So that's the psychology. Plus, everyone loves a good stat, right?
Yeah, love it.
So you start with the stat. The second piece is this got us a little curious, and we wanted to know if our network was aligned with that stat.
Perfect, right? Yeah, you're using the network effect. I like that.
Right? So now we ask the question, we get 4 answers. That's the most you can get. And now not only do we put it out there and wait, but you can get that poll into the inbox. We did it. We did inventory. Who are the 127 people that you want conversations with? Start by asking them to engage on a poll. Hey, Mark, hope you're well. I know it's been a little while. We just read a stat that 54% of da-da-da-da-da, and we're doing a little of our own research, and we would love your input.
Love that. Really, really. So you're creating an engagement, right? It's not just, it's almost like a pull through strategy versus let me push. It says, hey, come and join the conversation, really, just like you would, to tie back to your original point of what you would do at a networking event.
Yes.
Love that.
Yeah. And people love to be asked their opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got 5 quick questions. This is a new segment that I'm trying out as well. It's called Yay or Nay. So I've got 5 things that you see often on LinkedIn, and I would love to get an expert's opinion on it. Are you down with that? I'm
down.
You are the best. All right, yay or nay? Tagging 10 other people in your post that you don't know so well.
Nay.
Nay. Okay. LinkedIn stories. Yay or nay?
Yay-ish.
Yay-ish. Okay, yay-ish. Walking videos of, walking, hey, I'm walking and I'm doing a video, and that's the majority of the video content you have.
Yay for the right people.
Yay for the right people. Okay.
Joe Hasselbaum does an amazing job of this. Yeah. And yay for Joe.
Yay for Joe. Maybe look at some other strategies if you're someone besides Joe. Okay. Personal photos on LinkedIn.
Yay at a minimum.
Yay at a minimum. Okay. Okay, so a little bit of personality, but not every single update shouldn't be of you and your kids or your vacation or something like that.
Correct.
Okay, and the last one, and this one is timely: politics, religion, other hot button topics. I've seen some people really go all in on some of this, especially when it comes to politics recently. What are your thoughts on that?
Unless that is your business, nay.
Okay. Those are great. All right. That was awesome. Thanks so much for playing along with that, Brynne. Brynne, we're at about 35 minutes here. So this has been an awesome conversation. I think there's so much already that salespeople and sales leaders can really already implement. I'd love to have you back for a second session because there's so much meat here and so many other topics that we haven't even covered yet.
I would love that.
That would be great. All right. Well, let's close then with the final 5. So these are 5 rapid fire questions. I'll ask, you answer. And let's start off with favorite sales related movie.
Oh my God. Oh, how can I not know what that might be?
You planned for everything but this question.
Oh my gosh. Can we come back to it?
Let's come back to it. Favorite sales book.
I'll just say Glengarry Glen Ross. Let's just.
Classic. Okay. We'll go with that one. Favorite sales book.
Gap Selling.
Gap Selling with Keenan. What do you know now that you wish you would have known when you first got into sales?
What do I know now? The importance of taking notes on every single person you meet.
I like that. That's really good. Best purchase of 2020 under $100.
Under $100. Best purchase in 2020 under $100. My $25 Bluetooth teeny tiny thing that I walk with.
Perfect. And you still got room in that budget for more. Love it. And your favorite social media follow?
That I follow?
Yeah.
My favorite social media. Sales Experts channel.
Awesome. Sales Experts channel. All right. And Brynne, where can our listeners connect with you if they really like the content, which I know they will? There was so much meat in here. Where else can our listeners connect with you and engage with you?
So
could it be LinkedIn?
It could be. Yeah, I'm still the only Brynne Tillman on LinkedIn. And we have at LinkedInLibrary.com, we have tons of free resources.
Wow. All right. LinkedInLibrary.com. I'll make sure we include that in the show notes. Brynne, this has been an absolute pleasure. This has been awesome. There's so many great nuggets here, things that people can implement. Just alone, the whole connection strategy of using your current connections and leveraging that for different referral partners, I think is a great strategy that everybody could start using today. So, Brynne, thanks so much for taking us inside your sales playbook.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, Mark.
Awesome.